Good morning. This is Julia Gambale from Digital Media Sync. I am co-owner and co-founder of Agents of Branding, and I work here at Known Co-working. We are at 139 Orange Street in New Haven. Today I have a guest and I'm super excited and I want to get started right away, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that are coming up. One is because we do have 3 live streams. We have Pivot Talk, we have Connection Corner. We all know this now, right? And here we have Digital Media Sync, which is happening right now. But Connection Corner, we've been pretty busy. Yesterday we had Pivot Talk and Carolyn Tanby from Collab and Margaret Lee as well were guests. So if you missed that yesterday, that is on our nhvknown.com/known live. And then on Thursday, we are going to have a Connection Corner, and Connection Corner is with Barb Nangle. Barb Nangle is Known's community manager, and she's also known for motivating, connecting, and inspiring people. And speaking of inspiring people, we are going to be talking about financial empowerment, which is such a very important topic. It's important for all of us. It's important to me. So Thursday the 11th, we are going to have the New Haven Financial Empowerment Center improves the financial stability by embedding financial empowerment. So their counselors are certified in the areas of debt, credit, and understanding the challenges of safe banking and saving money. They provide one-on-one financial counseling and have the ability to pull credit, create budgets, and assist in creating financial goals. So we'll have Latrice Allen and Brenda Moore coming in to talk to Barb about financial empowerment. So that's Thursday, the 11th at 4 p.m. But today, we are going to be talking with Zef Zan from Entrepreneurs That Soar, and we're going to be talking about, hello, good morning. Wait,
of course I'm muted again. Hello, good morning, take 2.
It's Tuesday. It's
I
a warm
know,
spring day.
I had a long day yesterday. So I am happy to be here. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. I can totally hear you now. So I was just gonna I was like, come on, Zef, let's get rolling. Just jump right into it.
I'm gonna jump into it. So what are we talking about today? So I thought, when you asked me what would be a great topic, what do you want to do? I say, hey, it'll be nice to actually do the truth about virtual events. That's who I am. I am a live broadcast and virtual events producer and consultant. And I just recently launched my new concept, live virtual vendor shows with Vendor Shows Live. So in case that's just like a preview of what I'm going to talk about today and what we're going to talk about today. And Julia, you were part of that launch event, and thank you so much for doing that.
That was so much fun. And yeah, I knew from the periphery, I was like, oh, Zef is up to something new.
So yeah, I had fun doing that. And I think, people are right now, everyone's trying to figure out this virtual event part, right? And I've done a lot of virtual events for almost 10 years now. And I thought, what would be great is just to kind of redo an unpacking of a live launch event. And I kind of shared with everybody today in the post. If you're wherever you are, you might be seeing a post that says, event description, and then the 5 things that I wanted to kind of have a conversation about, right? So the title we're talking about today is the truth about virtual events and the unpacking of a launch event. So why did I want to talk about this? Because you experienced this behind the scenes. A launch event for me is just if you're especially doing something new, right? And you want people to know what you're doing, hello, you kind of want to create some kind of buzz or momentum, build some kind of momentum for that launch event. In fact, it's just not applicable to just a launch event, any kind of event. And I think for us who actually host and produce this kind of events, we forget that approach, because if we had in-person events, we would really, really work hard to get people in the seats, right, and do those, events, and promote the event. So I thought, it'll be nice to just talk about like how we kind of do it behind the scenes, the goods, the bats, or the not so pretty, and how we had to multitask. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is that like, let's get clear about live virtual events versus like on-demand content, right? Events.
Right.
What's your take on that particular like live event and on-demand, Julia? Because I know some people have different perception about it. They're all the same. No, they're not.
Yeah. So my perception was actually that live events, like we're doing a live event right now.
Yeah.
Correct. And then on demand, I was under the impression that was pre-recorded. That's not correct?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay. Woo,
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Because, this is where I think many people just talk about virtual events and they go like, oh, we can pre-record it and we can just, you stream it. Yes. But, the engagement is not in real time.
Not there. Yeah.
Right.
Unless you do something like, I know one time somebody had asked, can we do it pre-recorded and then do a watch party for that pre-recorded piece?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a different, I think, approach and culture and expectations of between the two. So for me, live virtual events, whenever there's a word live, to me is in real time.
In
right?
Real time. What we're doing right now is in real time.
Correct. So if you put in a comment, I can answer that question and address your comments now in real time.
Right.
And the on demand.
Good morning to us. So we
right. Good morning, Randy.
Good
Exactly. And then if you actually have on demand, like on demand to me is a lot like YouTube, right? So YouTube people produce it, put it out there nicely, polished, blah, blah, blah. And then on demand, whenever you want, you can actually watch it. For me, the replays of the live events, are the on demand. All right. How do we actually approach the production of it are kind of different, I think. Live events is just like, oh my God, live, the in-person, we're live on stage. How do we get people to engage with us? We have to think of all this loads of moving parts. Mm-hmm. On demand, let's just say if you decide to put it on YouTube, you can strategize. How do you want to engage with people, right? Where do people contact you? Where do people ask questions? There's a way to that. So one of the things I think live virtual events, yes, you can actually, do on Zoom and all that stuff, but the on demand is usually parked somewhere. So let's just get that clear. The other one I want to kind of like say to people, because we're talking about the live and on demand, there are platforms that you can actually, like you said, you can pre-record and then stream the pre-recorded and do a watch party. Can you do that? Yes.
Yeah.
Would you call that live event? Live only to a certain extent because you're streaming it, but the engagement is not really live on camera, right? You can do live chats, but it's like I'm watching a replay. Yeah, it's just not the same. And usually when it's live event, you go like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm next, that adrenaline rush. Yeah. So, and the other thing, let's just also say right now, one of the things when I want to unpack a launch event, I usually say like, what's sexy right now with live virtual events? People have this idea of if I do a event on Zoom, and I'll tell you why I mentioned Zoom a lot in a few minutes, but if I do it on Zoom, will I get the same effect? I don't know. So one of the things I ask people to think about when they want to create a sexy event is what kind of experience you want to let your audience experience your event. Do you want it to be engaging? Do you want, do you want to build a relationship? Then I usually say, what's sexy for me in vendor events? I'm sorry, in virtual events. I'm talking about vendor events. In virtual again, virtual events is that engagement, that conversation.
Yeah.
Right. That follow up, right? I'm having conversation with you and I'll say, hey, by the way, go here right now. I'm gonna take a look at my information and come back if you have any questions. That's the live engagement part. For me, that is sexy. And the other part about being sexy with virtual events is I think if you can actually archive the conversation in your virtual event, that's sexy, because then you can continue to
continue that conversation.
Yeah, somebody mentioned something in there. I missed what it was. I can't remember who it was. Let me go back to that conversation and take a look at it. Right. So the types of virtual events that are sexy right now, I think, are like broadcasting, like what we're doing right now.
What we're doing right now.
Yeah. So like a talk show, like an interview, that is like everybody wants to do this right now. So I actually, what I'm doing with the concept I'm doing with Vendor Shows Live this year is actually vendor shows or vendor events, right? So they're virtual vendor shows or virtual vendor events that would include virtual trade shows, virtual expos, the fairs or anything in that, and many
conferences.
Conferences, summit. That's a lot of what's sexy right now, because people are finding ways to connect face to face and have a conversation with their audience. So those are kind of sexy right now, and that's why when I launched my concept, I thought it'll be great to have like all these pieces put together, right? Where do I have a conversation, and after the conversation, where do I build the community and the connection? Kind of have to think about that, right? So part of doing a launch event or any kind of live virtual event is think about, like, if you had the actual in-person event, what are the components we need to kind of implement? So these are the things that are important for virtual events. Any thoughts to what I just said as far as the sexy virtual events right now, Julia?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I think that it's wonderful that you're mentioning that they're sexy virtual events.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, it's early in the morning and we just kind of like want to wake people up.
Yes.
But yeah, I think definitely, and that's the thing, right? Because when you're in a setting where you're usually talking in person to people, there's a lot of back and forth, the conversation kind of flows and that sort of thing. When you're online and you're live, and, you really have to keep that momentum going, so having, prompts and kind of scripting things a tiny bit, like just having like an outline. And then I know one of the things that you mentioned, and I apologize if I'm like giving a spoiler, but when we were working together yesterday, and we had you had the event in 3 parts, right? And you had a cue sheet. And I was like, that was sexy to me because I knew what I needed to do.
You're absolutely right. So that's
this is how this is going to roll. This is where you come in. And I was like, you know what? I can just sit back and relax until it's my turn.
Yes. And I think, that's a lot of like the deep dive into the production part. But I think, in any kind of, I would say virtual event production, right? In trying to create that same, whatchamacallit, like the same,
well, it's branded,
feeling,
right?
Yeah. Feeling or
experience. Like a branded
exactly. In-person events. For me, I try to mimic the actual, like the same. How can I create that same experience of real in-person events, right? So one of the things, if I were to produce in-person events, I would have a way for the people or the talents who are helping me out. How do I guide them? How do I onboard them? They can actually do, perform their roles. So that's one of the big things I think with virtual events that people are not thinking about. So when I unpack this, I talk a lot about, like, think about that. So one of the things here's like a tip. One of the things when I actually plan for any kind of virtual event, like building the buzz and momentum, I approach it. You want to know how I do it? I actually approach it like a presidential campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because for me, if you actually are running, a candidate for a presidential campaign, what do? Right? You kind of create the buzz. You kind of create because you want to.
Right.
You want to let people know what the event is all about, who you are, what you do, what your tribe looks like. So I kind of try to mimic that, the same thing. When I do a launch event virtually, I think about that, right? If I were to run a presidential campaign for somebody, what would that look like? So I try to do that experience that I try to create, the engagement, the conversation, how can I stay in touch with the tribe? Those are all important. So if somebody says to me, so I'm going to touch the Zoom part right now. So I am going on camera right now and saying, disclaimer, I am allergic to Zoom. There, I said it. So I'm not saying Zoom is bad. I'm just saying, does it match your presentation or your virtual event goals? If your goal for a virtual event is to have a conversation, connect with people, have a way to build a community, then Zoom may not be the best platform. Because what happens, Julie, when you use Zoom and then you're done with a meeting?
Yeah.
What happens? The conversation
goes right. You just said when you're done with the meeting, Zoom is for meetings.
Yes.
Zoom is not necessarily for dynamic interactions.
Correct.
In a business sense,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, I had to pick. So I've been around long enough to know, instead of making 3 different investments in 3 different platforms to create all the different, to match all my goals, is there a platform that can do it all or close to do it all? Right. So for me, if somebody is actually, let's just say, hey, I want a platform that can kind of do some sort of marketing or tracking or analytics, is there a platform for that? I'm like, great. Then you need to take a look at all this other stuff. So if you're thinking about doing a launch event or any kind of virtual event, think about that. Is Zoom the place that you need to be? Yeah. Can you do lead generation? Of course, because you can create the form to sign up. Then after that, do you want to archive your conversations? If you want to archive your conversation, well, it may not be the best place, right? And if you want to create like a resource building or marketing, can people access that content anytime after the event easily, right? If no, that means...
And that's the question, is can they do it easily? Yes, because you can record it, but it's for a period of time, depending on which package you have. You can pull down the chat, the notes in the chat as well. But again, if you get bumped out, that's not there for you anymore. I've noticed that's definitely one thing where I noticed.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I found out is that sometimes when I see, because with the platform that I use, I can see people just have conversations, which is cool. We can do it in Zoom, absolutely. Yeah. But people tend to go like, oh my God, I need to connect with you. And then if they forgot who it was, they can come back to that thread, right? Just like Facebook, you can always do. The thing is that with Facebook, people who uses Facebook are the only ones who can access that comments, right? People who are not on Facebook, maybe they're more on LinkedIn, then you have to go to LinkedIn. What if you actually have one place? It could be your website, wherever, to just archive the conversation. That's awesome. And I think that's a great way to kind of build the community after a virtual event. I think the engagement is so important, and I think, well, in person as it is, I know we all do, and not many of us do the best job in following up. So one of the big things I think about, because everything we do online can be tracked, right? Yeah. It's just what's our strategy. So if I can create a way for the community or even event attendees or visitors to kind of like track the conversation, still keep in touch, or we, the producers, event producers, actually, there's a way for us to maybe just email you directly or, connect with you, answer your question. I want to do that easily. And also think about like, how can I deliver this features easily, because otherwise a lot of work to do, so yeah.
And I know that you've been playing in a bunch of different spaces too, and I've gotten to kind of experience that as well. Do you want to talk about some of these spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that would kind of dive into a little bit about the future of virtual events and what we want to know, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, a big part of the culture of virtual events, right, is the fact that what is it that you're trying to achieve in your virtual event, right? Are you just gonna do a virtual summit and conference that you can just do lead generation? Great. If you probably want a little bit of engagement and you want to build a community that can always follow up with somebody, that's a different part. And then there's also the marketing monster over there, right?
Which is a whole different function.
A whole different function. So what I've learned, in fact, with the recent launch event, the March 1st event, Vendor Shows Live, is that so I was just researching for myself. I think as of pandemic, March 2020, right? The era that we're living in right now.
Here we go.
Yes, there's a glut. And when I say a glut, I'm not kidding. There's a glut of like virtual events platforms that is just they're just around right now. Okay, so I've used a few, but I've stuck with two because one is more of a streaming platform,
right,
and the other one I've stuck around since almost their conception days, just because there are a few features that I really like, and I would not trade them because I've seen enough virtual platforms right now that do not have this feature. It just helps me to simplify my process. So the streaming platform I'm using, what you're using right now, is StreamYard, because it has a lot of features that can kind of simplify my process. That means if I want higher engagement, I can do that, like what you're showing right now on screen. What are you trying to achieve in cultural events, right? So we can actually engage. It's a conversation starter. We can pull out people's conversation. Got a question, leave a comment, right? So we can actually interact and engage. So I use that because it keeps my multitasking skills behind the scenes simpler versus like an advanced. Can I use the advanced? Yes, but I might need somebody to moderate the conversations. So that's a different topic for a different day. So I use platform like StreamYard to kind of simplify my production process. Now, why StreamYard is because the tool that I've been using for like my live conference virtual event kind of thing, right, actually integrates with the streaming platform. Meaning, even though I can't archive my conversations here in StreamYard, but I push it to the other platform. I know it's a little bit technical, but if I push it in there, right, I will have a way for people to engage, and there's archive features in there. So that's what I'm doing right now. The other one is called Crowdcast. It's a platform that not only allows me to stream live and do like any kind of webinar presentation, conference. I can create multi-sessions, but it has built-in marketing features. Stuff that I like, like analytics. I can see where my audiences are coming in from. Are they coming in from Facebook? Are they coming in from LinkedIn? It helps me to kind of know where my, strategy works better, and I can focus there. So right now, those are the two that I'm using. Are there any more? Absolutely. There's a lot of other virtual platforms right now. And one of it is, gosh, I love this platform. It's called Socio. So if you actually get a chance, check out socio.io. So if you're like an event planner or event producer, and you go like, oh, maybe I want to find a virtual platform that I can kind of incorporate all my in-person features for a virtual event. So Socio has like, okay, that's a virtual wall. People can pass. So instead of using just social platforms that, maybe if you did something wrong, you can be in a jail, right? So you can use like socio.io. They have like agenda, they have like community, and then they have event wall, and then they also have like, okay, sponsor booth. They have the conference halls. So if that's the kind of thing that you want to do, there's platforms like socio.io, and then there's also Brand Life, I think. Oh my God, that Brand Life is awesome.
Brand Live? Okay.
Yeah, Brand Life actually has a lot of the it integrates streaming. It really integrates streaming, the platform, and all that stuff. And then there's also Encaptive. So Encaptive is actually local here to Connecticut. So
Yeah.
yes, Encaptive. You've known her. She's probably Sharon Malkin Daniels is the
Yeah.
CEO and founder. So and Captive started out, so they were the winners of the Stanford Innovation Weeks. I can't remember, it was a competition for, I think, the innovator, Connecticut Innovator,
Yeah.
something
I
like
was
that.
there for that presentation
Yes.
that she gave.
So I don't know if you know that you know this, but what Encaptive has done. So Shannon, if you're watching this, this is for you.
Hello,
What
Shannon.
Encaptive has done is that they started out as a presenter or slide presentation app, right? For
Right.
very intuitive one, very cool. And then
It
because
was to measure the
correct, they have
yeah, I remember that because we were as they were doing their presentation, they had us download the app
yeah,
and it was
follow
measuring.
the presentation on
Yeah.
your devices, which is really cool. And I'm having goosies to talk about it because these are the things we have to think about when we go virtual, right? When we go virtual event, that experience we're trying to create for our audiences, right? It's not boring. It's something interactive. I
Yeah.
think virtual events, if it's not engaging, it's not interactive, it's gonna get boring. It's just not talking head. We don't want that. So I'm
Right.
all about conversation. You talk, I talk, just like if we're at Starbucks sitting down, and having conversation. So Encaptive has actually advanced the platform into a virtual events platform. And I had the privilege to kind of go behind the scenes a little bit. And I'm like, wow, this is super cool, where they even have a virtual door, welcome to the conference or something like that. So it was kind of cool. So there's so many platforms. But again, I'm going to tell you, heads up, if you're incorporating streaming into your virtual event, right?
Yeah.
If you're kind of new or you're kind of a novice at this, you will probably find that a lot of these platforms, virtual events platforms, are kind of pricey because streaming ain't cheap. However, if you do know how to use or you do know how to integrate existing tools, probably between Zoom or StreamYard, into your website, and you know the process, which is a lot, and which I've
Yeah.
done from scratch, you can actually keep your costs down. However, start small. You don't have to do too many sexy stuff. But what I think is important is knowing what your processes are, what you can handle, and work with what you have now.
Right. And isn't that always the case, right? We always go
Yeah.
back to the main things that we talk about, and I've heard you talk about, is when you're preparing, right? Make sure you know what your brand is. Make sure that you have processes. Be careful when you're choosing your platforms as well, because if you know ahead of time what you needed to do, it's so much easier to choose that platform and what you can handle.
Yes, exactly. That's why, I'm not. So my disclaimer about the Zoom is that I'm allergic to it because the work that I do involves production, right? It's not just an online meeting. So if somebody says to me, like, can I just use Zoom? I start to hyperventilate just because they're not getting the idea of production. So I just came out from a 3-day training event where they actually use Zoom. So, you're familiar with the new concept of stream, like a virtual event, like Anthony Robbins has done, where they have all these faces on Zoom on camera, right?
Yeah.
They have 2,000 people on screen. Okay, the disclaimer with that, I'm going to tell you. So this is the unpacking of like a live virtual event. If you want that kind of live virtual events, I'm going to go into the nitty gritty, so it might make your head spin a little bit. So disclaimer there. This is a question of, do you want to simplify your process, or you really want to take on, like, I don't care about technology. I love technology. I want to do it. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to dive right in. Yeah.
Yes. For me, a lot of what I do is remote production because it makes it simpler. There's a lot of things that I can use. I can guide people. That's just my, my concept. So like a production like the Anthony Robbins one, what you must understand, can it be achieved through Zoom? Absolutely. But you must also understand there's a lot of technology processes involved. Not only technology processes, but technology equipment. Okay. So if you think you're a novice and you're starting off there, you must understand that you have to take time to study, discover, and learn and establish your processes before you go like, this is the route I want to go. However, if you want to keep it simple because you're a novice, right? It can be as simple as just using StreamYard or something like StreamYard, or even like Zoom and make it basic. That's fine. But you really have to understand. So I belong to a group out of this event. I belong to the group. So I see a lot of people in there that talks a lot about technology. And I get like, even I, who is like I call it a seasoned person in this space, I get like, because my thought process is that if you want to do an event and you're a novice, right, should you really concentrate on technology or should you concentrate on your processes just to make sure they match the goal that you want to achieve now, right?
Yeah, because when you're doing an event, you're talking about like your goal for the actual event, how you're interacting with your audience, right? And so then if you get down that rabbit hole of technology, that's the same thing. It's like if I'm doing, if I'm doing a marketing campaign and I spend all my time talking to my client about, well, the technology we used to do this and the thing we used to do that, and the client's just like, yeah, but how am I going to get more sales?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, each time, like, I want to say, but I don't want to say, but so I just I just read the comments people write. I'm like, okay, we're not supposed to be talking about A to mini, and like, so I want to also say, like, if you feel, I know this, most guys are into technology, and if you guys want to do it, that's fine. I just think this is my thought process. The first year, especially if you're a novice, right, and you want to delve into live virtual events or virtual events per se, take the time. If you feel like you really, really want to launch, say if in the first year, the first 6 months will probably about making a lot of trial and error processes, because you need to try it out to know like where do you need to start and then where do you need to hold your process. And then if there's anything else like equipment, technology, that comes a little bit later, you work with basics. And when I showed people like, what I have for my setup, they look at me, that's all. I'm like, that's all, because I don't want to be pushing too many buttons because it overwhelms me. So I keep it simple. I've learned that because the more equipment you have, there's more room to kind of, make a mess, right?
Make an error.
Yeah. So that's why I say, like if you are a producer of a virtual event or summits or conferences, think about that. Can you use Zoom? Absolutely. But also match your goal. Like after you use Zoom, you close out the Zoom. Where do you want your tribe to go? Do you have a community in Facebook group? Great. But then you also have to do a LinkedIn group. And then you also have to do, I don't know where else. So what if you can house it in one location?
And then broadcast it out. And that was definitely, I have to interrupt for just 1 second and say that for Digital Media Sync, right? Same thought process. Like this is like so right on, because I was like, okay, I'm doing this live and in person and people are coming to me and we're sitting in the room and we're talking and we're discussing and we feel good and da-da-da. And then the pandemic happened. Okay, fine. Let's just move over to Zoom, right? And it was just like, whatever, like snap decision.
Everybody.
We go to Zoom, we have the live meeting and everything, but then it's like, I want to talk to, I want to like really broadcast this to the world. This is information that people need. And I want to partner with other people and I want to reach more and more people. So that brought us to, StreamYard. Which is more of a streaming platform. So now I'm on Facebook and now I'm on YouTube and I can be on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. And people can comment with me and I can bring guests on.
Yes.
And it was really a progression, right? Because as you're hearing, as my needs changed and as I was thinking more about what am I who do I want my audience to be? How do I want to reach my audience? I'm moving into a platform where I can do more, be more, and I don't need to know a lot of technology. I'm being guided. So when I'm looking for a platform for me, I don't want to be a producer. I don't want to have cue sheets all over the place all the time. I just want to do my weekly thing.
I know.
Do it very easily.
That's what I said earlier, right?
Yeah.
I think Randy was actually, when she said exactly, it's probably what I was saying here. Like, you have to discover. So I think like in the first 6 months, so my time frame is always 90 days for you to kind of like experience it. So I say the first 6 months is like, oh my God, whenever it comes to virtual events, or this is what I learned when I started broadcasting and streaming, is like, fail as many times as you need to in the beginning, because only then you will know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Because right now you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to do my virtual event on Zoom. Okay, go try it for 30 days and let us know if this is exactly the place that you want to be at. And then if somebody says you try this, why this? Try it first, and then you can compare. Because if you don't try, you can't compare. The only reason people are doing Zoom right now is because everybody says, hey, Zoom, 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 Zoom. But, is it really the best place for you, right? To have a meeting? Fine. Here's another disclaimer with Zoom, because of my thing is production, broadcasting, right?
Yeah.
And I always want to make sure that the quality is conversation, engagement. Do I really want 20 people on screen? Okay? Because here's the thing. If I want to create a conversation piece, like we had yesterday, example, we had like 22 ladies behind stage, right?
Right. Yep.
Could I can, with the StreamYard, you can have 10 people on screen. But do I really want that, right? Because I feel, here's my thing. It could be different for everybody. For networking, that's fine. But when you produce content like a content like this.
Like what we're doing right now. Yeah.
Right. Like what we're doing right now, we're having conversation. Even if you go to a conference, you have panelists talking. Do you have 20 panelists on there? Not really, right? So think about the in-person event. I don't like when I produce something like a virtual event, there's dead air spaces in between conversation. And somebody's going to sit down, because we're on camera. Somebody's going to sit down and do this, right? Because they're not speaking. They're distracted.
They're just,
do you want them to be distracted on camera while you're producing this? What will that quality of content be for the whoever's consuming your content? So I think about all that, so.
And then conversely,
correct.
If there's too many people on screen and then you don't know where to look when somebody's talking, because that happens to me a lot when I'm watching, things where there's, like you said, like 10, 20 people on screen, they're kept on screen, all of them, as one person is talking, and you're trying to pick out the person who's talking and you don't know who it is because by this time the faces are so small.
I know. And then one more thing, what do you think when you have 20 people on screen? Or let's just say we take a smaller number, 10 people on screen. What kind of experience are we creating? Distractive one, because we have a speaker talking, but we have 9 other people, let's just say 8 other people, right? So if you and we have 8 other people on screen, right? Because now if I'm the viewer, I know I will do this for sure. When look, oh, what's behind that person? Oh, a cat just passed by. Now we totally just robbed our viewers.
You know what I mean? It's either distraction or it's a puzzle.
If it's just a networking event, folks, I'm cool with it because you can have fun, you can make a party out of it. But when we're doing live virtual event where there's quality and the and value in the content, do we really want to have 10 people on screen? Because what we will be doing is robbing our viewers from the value of the content that we're presenting, and I feel like somebody's going to be drinking coffee and I'm thinking, oh, I'm wondering what coffee they're drinking. Right? And then the cat. Hey, I'm not talking like, remember that video of that news anchor from London or whatever, and then the child came in, right? And then somebody marching in, right? And then the helper or the wife who's trying to get the kid out of the camera. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that it's not okay. I'm just saying if it's a casual networking event, fine. But if you're streaming content like that, even like you're doing town hall, right? Great, you have people. But understand the content type you're producing, right? If it's a town hall, you have 10 people. Okay, great. Make them understand that there's no distraction and be in the meeting. Here's another thing that I kind of read on LinkedIn a few days ago, and I think it makes really a great sense. So let's just say we have a Zoom meeting. So that's live, right? So if you stream this out, say on social platforms, the conversation or the blog topic was like bottom line is, are you distracted? Are you really paying attention in a meeting? So what they're trying to say is that sometimes, yes, the distraction is a lot in virtual events or meetings because, you're not talking or whatever. And you're like, take a phone and just like, and then you have another screen, you start looking, but you want people to be present with you, right? Because you're in a room in a personal location, we sit there, right? We pay attention. So those are the things that I think, like when you do a virtual event, we have to think about like, how do we want, because that's a video replay. How do we want that video to look like for the audience? That's my thing. If I can't create the engagement or conversation, it becomes boring. People are not come back to my event. It's not engaging. It's just I can attend any Zoom meeting, so that's my take on that.
Especially now, right? And just like when we think about in-person events and where and when we want to network, right? We say yes and no to things based on what our schedule is. Same thing for virtual and for streaming events, right? It's like there's only so much time in the day. Where do we hit that wall? It's like if I have to do one more event online, that's it.
You make a great point, right? So I think in the year, for people who are not used to anything virtual, right? What more live, right? They will, what I found is that people are kind of stretched out in that because they're not used to this, right? So for me, I always have to think like, how can I make them pay? Like how can I create an experience that they want to be here? That they want to be. So if we produce the on-demand videos, right, we think about like the eyeball. So this is what I've learned from a YouTuber. They go like, why the high ranking or the most viewed videos, because they change your eyeballs views for like every 3, 4, 5 seconds, because attention is 7 seconds. So I have to think about that when I do virtual events, right? How can I engage? How can I make people like, that have that FOMO mentality? Like, the fear of missing out. Like, wait, what did Julie just say just now? Wait, she just put up an image. I like that, So I think about all that user experience is important for me, because now I'm thinking my virtual events have a replay. So that's a replay button that will kind of like look on demand. Now, if I'm watching the video, do I want them to continue engage with us, watch this more? You know what? So if you just want an online meeting, stay in Zoom. But if you want a virtual event that has more engagement, community building, follow up, build a community, Zoom may not be the best place. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's watching. If you're watching this even on replay, like drop us a comment and let us know, like what are your thoughts about what we discussed here? Because when I unpack events, I like to talk about that. All these things, because people think, oh, virtual events, how you can just do it on Zoom, and I'm thinking like, okay.
Right.
And the other places like Zoom are like what, Google Meets and stuff like that. Those are great.
Google Meet or Jitsi. There's, and that's the thing, right? And there's so many, and I think defining the difference between meeting platforms and live virtual event platforms, right? And you can take a meeting platform and have it feed into a streaming platform. That's an option as well. But like you're saying, it's like you really have to think about how you're engaging with your audience, what your goals are as an organization, what you're trying to do. And if there's many moving parts, like you want to have a conference, but then you want that conference to stream out to as many people as possible. If you want to have, and one of the things that we kind of touched upon a little bit, but not really, was breakout rooms, right?
Yes,
Having
exactly.
those meet, you pull off from the main event and you have separate conversations
I
elsewhere.
love that you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Because you know where I'm going with this, right? So Julia, so kudos to Julia. Because I almost forgot about this. Yeah. So you talked about something really great. You said the networking part and what like all you want to do if you want to break out rooms, right?
Right.
So I also recently discovered another platform that is, so this is the sexy part of this platform, right? So we talk about like, okay, the other part, yes, I do like the breakout rooms in Zoom. I thought they were smart in kind of like doing that feature, offering that feature. But now it kind of has upgraded a little bit. One of the things that I found on this platform was virtual tables. So virtual tables, and you go like, what do you mean, Zaf? Virtual tables. So imagine if we were at an in-person event, like a conference or trade show, right? So one area of the trade show will have all the booths, and one trade show corner will probably have the live presentation stage, right? People, presenters talk, blah, blah, blah. And then one corner will be like probably a demo corner, whatever. There's this platform that I just discovered. Actually, it was recommended to me by a fellow broadcaster, producer. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to check it out. So I checked it out. There are actually a few right now. So that's this concept of what they call virtual tables, kind of like similar to the breakout sessions in Zoom. So these virtual tables, can you imagine? You can see pictures of tables and you can see pictures of chairs. And the beauty of this platform is like, let's just say I've kind of like, worked this into our process where you sit at a table and we can see your picture. Julia's at this table at a chair, and somebody can actually join Julia.
I saw that. That was so fun.
I know, right? Not only that, we get to see people moving around the space, right? For speed networking. And this platform is called AirMeet. You guys just have to check it out. And I think Julia and I will be talking about like maybe doing an event there. So you could probably check it out later. It's called AirMeet. So we thought, what if we can make this more fun and engaging? And I think AirMeet did a great job in creating a space like a breakout room, but they did it in more of a visual way because I know I'm visual. I don't know if you guys are. I'm very visual. So for me, like a table is much more fun rather than just waiting there in a breakout room. Like, okay, you've been sent to breakout room number 3. I'm like, can I just pick where I want to go? Yeah. So AirMeet has this, right? So when you get in what they call the social lounge, you'll see tables, right? Tables. And then the planner could plan like the table can have 2 chairs, 4 chairs. They can go up to 8 chairs. So you can really do like meet a sponsor or network with Julia or maybe a cafe corner. That's what I've done. So it's kind of cool for me. I'm like, okay, cafe corner. Can I bring my beverage and sit down and have a chat? Can I eat here? I know. So, there are so many ways of creating a very interactive and engaging virtual event. And for me, my goal, I feel like because that's who I am, like as a connector, I like to connect people who can have a conversation with one another. It's very important. And maybe a focused conversation. So virtual tables like that makes sense to me. Can I do Zoom? Absolutely. But I also want that feature where I can have archive conversation. That's the follow-up. That's the community. And it just doesn't have to be on Facebook. So these are
one of the things that I loved about AirMeet, like you said, is when you have the virtual tables, like you gave me a table, right? So I had my own table, and you saw the table, and then you saw my picture at the table. But then when somebody comes and sits down with me, then we're on camera with each other, and we're talking to each other. And when I saw like you came into the room, and then Jay came into the room, and it was like, this is great. Like I have like people sitting at my table, and we're talking.
Isn't that like in-person events, Julia, where you actually talking to somebody at an event and then suddenly you go like, oh, Julia, my friend's over there. I want to go join her right now, right? So I go,
and you saw like I love to the little networking up at the top, like you
at
can
the top,
see people in the circle.
Yes.
kind of coming in.
It's like you can visually see people moving around. And I think I was geeking out over that.
I was loving that because first of all, to have to have agency there and to have a presence, it's like, this is my presence, and people are coming specifically to see me. Or if I wanted to go into somebody else's room and, feel that kind of like, all right, I'm going to go over here and I know I'm going to be welcome because they're sitting there for me. Exactly. So giving your audience and giving your participants that agency to be able to like jump in, to be viewed, and that, and start a conversation.
Absolutely. And that's basically where the world of virtual events are heading. So this is the future of virtual events, right? And basically, how do you know? So one of the questions I said I'm going to kind of like cover is, how do we all know that we're actually ready for any kind of virtual event or live virtual event business, right? Yeah. Is have an open mind. Start there, because the moment somebody says virtual event, and if the words that come up from our mouths are I would prefer an in-person event. And I'm like, listen, can you just be a little bit more open-minded? Because the kind of virtual events we're talking about that we want to produce are not your grandma's virtual events. Okay. Respectfully, times have changed and technology have changed, and technology has given us ways to meet people differently, right? Not just broadcasting, but all this platform developers, software developers. Do you think if they don't see a demand that they would actually be developing these platforms? They are seeing such a huge demand and everybody wants to be in the game. So we know for sure that there are ways to connect with people organically and much more, intelligently, interactively, even though we're doing it virtually. Those I think yesterday, or I can't remember when we did the International Women's Day, we talked about some of the women that came on. I've been connected with them, done projects with them, collaborated on so many projects. I've not met them, and we've been connected for 8-9 years. My girlfriend, Liron from Israel, right? When she came on, when we were introduced by our friend in London, and she says, you have to meet Liron. So she became my co-host in one of my earlier streaming shows, right? Creative Chat Cafe. 9 years later, she reminded me yesterday it was 9 years. I was like, you sure it's 9 years? She goes, yep. And I'm like, really? So because through virtual events and broadcasting like this, I mean, you and I were able to just power up the technology and connect and show up consistently whenever we want. And somebody catches the replay, right? And now I always joke about this, but think about it as the truth. You're on your toilet seat. What do? You bring this. It used to be magazines, right?
This is definitely the new magazine,
Right. You're still listening to what Julia and I are sharing right here in this event. And suddenly you go like, oh, I have something to say about that. And what do? You start commenting, right? And you're still in the toilet seat. What are you doing? You're still connecting through a virtual event. That's the era that we're living in. And I think many people have connected with, other people in this world through these platforms is because, we show up consistently. We show up organically this way, right? And it makes it easier to meet other people. And I think, there's value in that. And that's basically, how we know we're ready is just have an open mind, because there's a lot of events going on right now, but we can also be burnout.
Right.
But if you find an engaging one, quality people, and that's what I try to do, is bring quality and value. And I think you can't say no to that.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. That's the big thing, right? Because when you put the whole package together, all the technology in the world, everything that you just talked about, really what it comes down to is, are you creating and delivering value? And then are you creating and delivering value in a way that people can easily engage with that? And that's definitely thing. And then all the rest, right, It's like, I like how we talked about technology and we gave some examples and we provided choices. But when it really comes down to it, is like, what is it that you're actually, what's the actual thing that you're delivering? You know, and it's just like those things surround what you are delivering. That's
exactly
the support. That's the support for it.
Exactly. And I see what you put up here. There was a lot to unpack here. Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack because I think I wanted to also like stretch you guys out a little bit in that mindset of being an open-minded. What's available to you, what you can take what you can chew right now. Don't have to think about everything I said. Just pick three. Pick three that you can handle right now, that you can chew right now, and do it really well. One of the things I think that has kind of like helped me stay consistent here, number one, because I love connecting people. So it doesn't matter if I'm in person or I'm here. I'm just trying to have a conversation with somebody. I feel like whenever I show up to a meeting, there's, like Zoom or even broadcasting, I'm like, I'm at that round table, like that show, Table Talk, right? I'm at a round table sitting down, having a conversation with Julia. Like I'm there with her right now and just like, oh, Julia, what's your day looking like, right? Because sometimes the best ideas come up from these casual conversations online.
Exactly.
And it's just like you're sitting down and, and then an idea, a concept comes around, you go like, oh my God. And then the beauty is that, wait, Julia said something really cool just now. Wait, let me go to the street.
Let me rewind that.
And then somebody said really cool something, made a comment to what Julia said. Let me find that comment in there. Oh, here's how I can still participate. That is the beauty of this whole virtual event. And of course, when I started, I saw the value in that. Oh, just kind of rewind. I should have started off with this. So I have about 3 minutes because I have to have an art. When I started this journey, it was really out of a need for myself, right? Because I facilitated a lot of in-person networking events, but it seemed like I was the only one passionate about connecting people or connecting or meeting new people. So I worked so hard to get people into the seats, fill my rooms, and it's a lot. I mean, the same amount of energy goes into an in-person event and a virtual event.
Right.
And I said, and if people wanted to consume the value that I bring, what if is there a way, because sometimes people can't, life happens, people can't attend events because, there's emergency, I have to pick my kids up from school, whatever. I thought about how, and actually more like, how can I bring this value to people in their own time? So we talk about the on-demand, right? Because the on-demand part was like, how can I still have Julia consume the value that I brought in today, and she can still participate in the engagement and still want to be part of my tribe, And I said, is there a platform, a way, a technology that I can stream this where they can come into my space whenever, even if that meant you're on a toilet seat? That's really how I got started with streaming and virtual event. So 10 years ago, yes, I was a pioneer. I call myself a pioneer just because I went the part, right? Because I feel like it was painful to try to get people to attend my events because I'm like, oh, they want to be here, but they always cancel last minute. And I said, what if there's a replay? What if that's a replay? They can still consume the value and still have a conversation with me. That was really my the true reason why I started this journey. And now 10 years later, people are just, because of a pandemic, now they get what I've been trying to say for the past 10 years.
Right. Now we get it.
Now we get it, Zef, what you're talking about.
And we can still call you a pioneer. So too.
I mean, it's great. So
you have 1 minute. I know I have 1 minute. This was a ton of information, and we are going to, this has been recorded. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook Live. I'm going to get this over to you, Zef, and it's also going to be on nhbknown.com as well. I'm hoping it's going to be on the Crowdcast. That was what it was, right? But thank you so much, because that was just a lot of really good information. And again, whether you saw this live or whether you're watching it sometime in the future, please drop a comment wherever you're watching it, and we will get back to you. I'm always looking at the comments in the Known Co-working Facebook page. This is going to be on LinkedIn. This is going to be on my Digital Media Sync Facebook page. Zef will have it as well, so it's going to be throughout. And obviously, as Zef had said, and I say too, that like we're always available to kind of answer questions. I'm going to direct all the questions over to Zef because he's the pioneer.
Randy, thank you so much. I'm glad you learned a lot. Okay, Julie, I want to say thank you so much for having me again. You know, I do have to go. Thank you, folks. Reach out to me. Bye.
Bye.